A brand that's been a staple in Taiwan for almost 40 years is about to, well, just disappear. We're talking about a massive retail shakeup that involves billions of dollars. So let's get into it and unpack what's really going on with this huge corporate gamble.
So let's just ask the big question right up front. After 38 years, is Carrefour really, truly leaving Taiwan for good? Well, the answer is a little more complicated, and honestly, way more interesting than a simple yes or no.
It all kicks off with what is basically a corporate breakup. It's the end of a really long partnership, a huge strategic move that's going to have some major ripple effects across the entire retail world here.
All right, so here are the hard facts. President, the massive company that now owns all of Carrefour's operations in Taiwan, is officially pulling the plug. They are ending the brand license agreement. What that means is that by the middle of 2026, that familiar blue and red Carrefour logo, it's going to be gone from stores all across the island.
So why, right? Why would President just walk away from one of the most famous retail brands in the entire world? Well, as it turns out, it wasn't just one thing. It was a really calculated decision, and there were some powerful reasons behind it.
This really breaks it down for us. First, and this is probably the most obvious one, money. President is going to save a fortune every year by not paying those hefty royalty fees. Second, it's about control. They'll have total freedom to innovate and change things up without needing a sign-off from the French parent company. This also means they could even expand internationally, something they couldn't do before. Third, some people argue the Carrefour brand just doesn't have the same sparkle it used to. And finally, they get to escape some pretty strict and expensive contractual rules, like being forced to open a minimum number of new stores in a market that's already pretty crowded.
To really get what's happening, it helps to understand how these giant global brands work. There are basically three ways they set up shop. You've got direct investment, where the company owns everything, think Costco. Then there are joint ventures with shared ownership, like Family Mart. And then there's brand licensing. That's where a local partner, like President, pays a fee just to use the name, which is exactly what they do with 7-Eleven. Now, Carrefour in Taiwan used to be a joint venture, but after President bought out all the shares, it just became a licensing deal. They were basically just renting a very, very expensive name.
And get this isn't just some isolated event happening only in Taiwan. Not at all. It's actually part of a much bigger global trend. And honestly, it might signal some trouble ahead for Carrefour's entire worldwide strategy.
Just take a look at this timeline. It really tells the story. It is not just President. Starting in 2024, Carrefour's partners in Jordan, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait have all started to end their licensing deals too. This just proves that President's decision isn't happening in a bubble. All around the world, it seems like local companies are starting to ask themselves if paying for that Carrefour brand name is really worth it anymore.
But, and this is a huge but, making a move this bold is, well, it's incredibly risky. And to understand just how risky, we don't have to look very far. In fact, President has been in this exact spot before. And let's just say it did not end well. Okay, let's hop in the time machine and go all the way back to 1995. The story is almost identical. KFC headquarters wanted to jack up the royalty fees. President said no way, and just like that, the partnership crumbled. This little piece of history offers a pretty powerful lesson in what brand loyalty is really worth.
So what happened next? Well, President launched its own fried chicken brand, 21st Century Fried Chicken. I mean, they had the stores, they had the staff, they had all the experience. But what they lost was the incredible brand power of KFC. And the result? They went from being the number 2 player in the fast food chicken game to, well, pretty much a minor competitor. So the big takeaway here is that a famous international brand brings a level of trust and recognition that is just so difficult to build from scratch.
Okay, so right about now, you might be thinking, hold on, what about other successful rebrands like B&Q changing its name or Darunfa getting bought by PX Mart? And that's a fair point, but those comparisons don't really hold up here. Carrefour is a different beast. It has way higher sales and brand recognition. And more importantly, it sells food. And when it comes to food, brand trust is absolutely everything. In the Darunfa case, the new owner, PX Mart, was already a bigger and more trusted local brand. So for customers, that change actually felt like an upgrade. This situation with Carrefour? It's just a whole different ballgame. So when you put all these pieces together, the potential rewards, but also the massive historical risks, you start to realize this isn't just a simple name change. No, this is an absolutely enormous corporate gamble. And the stakes?
They're staggering. Let's talk about those stakes in cold, hard numbers. The business we're talking about has an annual revenue of around 80 billion new Taiwan dollars. Just think about that number for a second. It really puts the whole decision into perspective. Uni President is betting a business of that size on its ability to create a brand new identity that people will trust just as much as they trusted Carrefour. And this whole thing, it cuts both ways. For the French Carrefour group, losing Taiwan right after seeing partners leave in the Middle East, that's a really big hit to their global brand strategy. And for Uni President, this is the ultimate test. It's their chance to build a homegrown retail giant, but it's also like walking a tightrope. If they fail, they'll be repeating some very expensive mistakes from their past. And so, that leaves us with the ultimate question. Can Uni President actually pull this off? Can they build a new brand that wins over millions of shoppers, or is this just the KFC story all over again? A cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate the power of a global brand? The answer is going to play out over the next few years, and you can bet the entire retail industry will be watching very, very closely.
喜欢这种学习方式，欢迎订阅我的频道，让我们一起用下一个10分钟，把商业英文变简单。